Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am your host, Chad Porto. Joining me is the glorious one. I was trying to think of a different intro, but I think that works today. The glorious one, Marcus Green. Marcus, it has been a week
Yes, it
since we
is.
did this, and I mean that not in a length of time, but in a uh, descriptive way of trying to point out that it's been a wild one. Wild 7 days since we did this. When we did this, we're like, hey, we're going to do the year end awards, and next week we'll talk about things we want to see. And then we got things we didn't want to see happening. So that's fun. I feel like asking the kid whose parents died in a tragic plane accident over the summer, hey, what did you do for summer vacation? I already know. we know. And unfortunately, it's very upside down right now in the world of wrestling. Mostly involving the Scott D'Amore of it all, and that's the thing that I think has shook the wrestling world almost as much as the Vince McMahon allegations. Which, granted, WWE fanboys aren't really like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They're still more worried about the WrestleMania main event than they are about all the copious amounts of victims that Vince McMahon has wrought in his near 50 years of running the WWE. So, not exactly the best representation over there. But the second biggest news story of the year, and really, I'm keeping tabs. I'm doing an early tally on things like matches of the year, storylines of the year, and all that, so we can have a bit more of a streamlined and efficient year ends for 2024. And I'm already telling you, like, there's nothing that's going to top the Vince McMahon of it all. Because he'll be more
No,
than likely on trial by the end of the year, if not in prison by the start of next year. Like, it's not going to be good. The only thing, and I'm giving it a 25% chance of happening, the only thing that would be bigger than Vince and the allegations against him is if the calamity that's about to ensue, because it's coming, and it's coming for a lot of jobs, it's coming for a lot of legacies, it's coming for a lot of careers. The only thing that would be bigger than the Vince story is if somehow there was so much upheaval and turmoil that came out from all the proceedings and all the top names involved were outed that it somehow actually killed the company. It wouldn't directly kill it, but advertisers to pull out, TV deals would be canceled. There would be wrestlers who may no longer be with the company, or if walking around as free men and women. Not to name names, I don't have any. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm just saying that when these dominoes start falling, it's not just one or two that go down. It's three or 400. And I guarantee you, by the end of this year, so many legacies and reputations will be tarnished. That's the only way things get worse, though. Like, that's the only way things somehow go beyond what we have currently. Uh,
yeah,
that's the only version of events that sees the Vince McMahon story getting knocked off the pedestal. That being said, the Demore story is an easy number two, at least for right now, and it's because of the shocking nature of it all. Now, I don't know how much of this is real, how much of it is subterfuge, how much of it is a cleanup job, but basically everyone's saying that this has been going on since probably the end of last year, if not the start of this year. TNA's parent company Anthem wants to bring TNA in line with the rest of the company in terms of how it's ran. I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea. But one of the things that is happening now is that people are rightfully pointing out that this is causing some turmoil in the locker room situation. A lot of guys and gals were shocked by this. Tommy Dreamer and Gail Kim apparently led the meeting that I guess preceded the announcement, right? Um, and apparently it was said to be chaotic, as one would expect. Like why wouldn't it be? Your boss just got fired, and for what reason? Apparently, a lot of it had to do with the fact that, and I call it the Titus effect. Famous comedian, or maybe semi-famous, depending on your views on comedians, Christopher Titus once had a show. It was on Fox called Titus. And Fox kept telling Titus, this is what we want to do. And eventually it got to the point where they were telling Titus, we want you and your on screen wife, who's based on his then real wife, to get a divorce on the show. We think it'll be more compelling storylines. Fun fact, the pair eventually did get divorced anyway in real life, so. But Titus didn't want that. The show is based on his life, and he wasn't divorced, and he didn't want to be divorced on the show. So he kept telling the executives at Fox that they're idiots. And he famously said, if you tell people that they're idiots enough, they'll fire you. And it sounds like that's the case that we had here with D'Amore, is that he kept butting heads with the people above him to the point where they thought it better to go at it without D'Amore at the helm than to keep trying to deal with the shenaniganry that D'Amore brought. Now, is that right, wrong? That's up to you. I can see both sides to the situation. I can see D'Amore being a stable hand that has helped guide the company to some significant highs. I also want to point out that a lot of D'Amore's success as a booker is not because of his booking. It's because of his ability to develop relationships. Now, that's not to undermine that necessity. But we look at, the last pay-per-view. A lot of that had to do with the hype around who was coming in. Not so much the storylines going into it. Think about it. They were off television for a good 5 weeks or so prior to it. Now, they were still airing TV shows, but it wasn't new content. A lot of hype was around the names and surprises that the company was bringing in. That's one of the reasons why the show was as successful as it was. Not because D'Amore had developed this captivating storyline, say, for instance, like The Bloodline, where people had to come in and check it out. Like that's not why the company had the success it did. And one of the things that I want to point out is that D'Amore as a booker has been at times very up and down. Now, sometimes we get Frankie Kazarian and Eddie Edwards, right? Other times we get Joey Ryan and and Mike Elgin, and we'll get to another name that was apparently about to be brought in, Bobby Fish. There's a lot of times when D'Amore did things that maybe was good for popping a moment, but wasn't good for the development of the storylines and the talent at end. And one of the big ones that we saw a lot of was the title hopping. New name shows up, they get belt. We're going to see it again with Mustafa Ali and likely with the Grizzled Young Vets. And it's just, to me, and this has been something you and I have complained about before, it is a bad thing that they keep doing. They did it with the knockout style with Trinity. She was there all of, 6 months, won the belt, left. Now, granted, people like Trinity. She's a very likable person, so a lot of people are like, well, I'm fine with it. But I'm not. I'm not fine with, even if they're likable people, I'm not fine with just giving belts to part-timers or people on their way out the minute they show up. It makes your company look pathetic. And it's one of the reasons, like the AEW deal, like Tony Khan got a lot of flack for how he allowed that to go. I think D'Amore deserves a lot of flack for that as well. I don't think it did a lot for the company as many think it did, outside of bumping that one pay-per-view. When Omega was on it, they said that did pretty well for Impact at the time. But a lot of what Scott D'Amore did was carny bullshit. Now, he did get talent. He brought talent in. He established the talent. He got guys like Josh Alexander over. He got guys like Frankie Kazarian back from AEW. He built Jordan Grace, though one would argue that Jordan Grace's almost dogged mentality with weightlifting and bodybuilding got Jordan Grace built. He has done a good job, but I think people are severely overreacting when they talk about D'Amore's departure. Yes, it's going to hurt in the interim for the closest among him, because you have guys like D'Amore, Speedball, a lot of the Canadians that came in over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years came in part because of D'Amore. But it's also important to note that we've sat here time and time again and complained about how the biggest moments, the biggest opportunities TNA has had during the D'Amore era have been lackluster. They've failed to make the impact, no pun intended, that they were intended to do. Even at Bound for Glory, we said Dolph Ziggler is cool, but that's not the big name that we wanted. We wanted a genuinely huge needle moving name. Dolph Ziggler is not it. And this has been a trend with Scott D'Amore for a little bit. Now, I will say this, and it needs to be said as well. D'Amore, significant upgrade over Billy Corgan. But that's not to say that Scott D'Amore is the best possible option. I don't know who the best possible option is. Maybe it's Dreamer and Gail Kim. They seem to be the new people running creative. But I'm not as shook about the lack of creativity that that the company's losing with D'Amore. I am worried about how this is going to affect the roster going forward and the loyalties they have, because apparently D'Amore, once he knew that he was on his way out, offered to buy the company. He got together with a few investors and made a legitimate offer, and apparently, so people say, I don't know how they know this, but the story goes that Scott D'Amore is independently wealthy, that his family owns a construction business and something else, and D'Amore has made a lot of money in his life in those outside avenues, and apparently he was willing to buy the company. Now, could he have sustained the company? I don't know, maybe. But it's not the same situation that we saw in WCW where Bischoff tried to buy it and he had everything ready to go and the company just didn't want to give him TV time. Anthem legitimately looked over the offer and basically said, we're going to keep this for right now. Now, Anthem is owned by a private equity firm, which are just the grossest, most disgusting, most duplicitous people who walk this earth, and all they care about is turning a profit, no matter jobs or legacies or companies getting destroyed in the process. So there's an opportunity for D'Amore to buy the company eventually, as soon as Anthem's parent company, who holds their debt, gets a nice offer. They'll make the deal. Will D'Amore keep trying? I don't know. We'll find out. As a storyline, as a booker, I don't think that the company's losing anything. I think the company could do a lot better without D'Amore as the leading voice, because we've seen how stunted storylines can get with D'Amore. However, as a recruiter, as a talent developer, as a person who can get people to sign new deals, D'Amore's done it as well as anyone. And I feel like not having the opportunity to try to talk him into taking a lesser role in the company was a mistake. I think as a talent recruiter and as head of talent relations, I think D'Amore has a lot of value. Ultimately, this was a stunning move that shook the wrestling world for a good week. And it continues to be a bit of a reverberating situation. Marcus, what's your thoughts on D'Amore out of TNA?
Yeah, didn't see it coming. Was surprised that it got as much buzz as it did because of it, but I think a lot of it had to do with coming off the momentum that the company was garnering. Obviously, it was hard to kill, and then signing with Nick, and obviously, Osprey was there, Carter passed through, and obviously Jordan getting the most press by being in the Royal Rumble. So coming off a lot of eyes being on him, and this really took everybody aback. I do mean everybody. Um, First glance, this seemed like a real bad decision. We talked about it in text, like this was seemed like something that was real, you know, several steps back. Although we wanted to wait because we talked about much of this stuff to be jumping out on the curb and then have our foots ran over or legs completely taken off by some news we didn't see coming. But it doesn't seem like it was anything malicious or uh, befuddling in terms of things being tied with the overall scope of speaking out that we continue to see with this whole Vince thing. So that was. I guess the one silver lining. But to your point, um, and when you see the outpouring of support and uh, just adulation that he got just from the rest of the roster, whether they were on it, off it, uh, potentially coming to it, I think it was a bad body blow to morale. I remember all them years ago, every other news article about TNA was either about whether they were cash flow positive or what was backstage morale like. And that backstage morale conversation has not been a thing for a very long time because I think of Scott Demore, and to your point about building those relationships, particularly with everybody on the roster, we gave a lot of support to and belief in, and like you said, getting people signed. And yeah, I mean, I'm also with you on the other side that creatively a lot of things could be vastly improved. The whole consistency with the casually dating thing by bringing people in and going back to that old TNA trope of, you get a title as a signing bonus. That's not working when people not sticking around for significant periods of time. Just passing through things is cool when it can benefit somebody else long term at a stand, but that's not how that tends to go. So we need to kind of pump the brakes on that. Also, to another one of your points, a lot of storylines can be improved upon. People need to be put in more title contention. People need to be shown more consistently. Somebody like Jonathan Gresham comes to mind in that. Somebody like Mike Bailey also comes to mind in that. In terms of title contention, both individuals. So yeah, I mean, obviously, like I said, didn't see it coming. Sucks because I know that was a bad morale killer instantaneously for a lot of folks. I can only imagine how that call went. I don't know if it was as bad as the one years ago that Dixie had to do when we weren't sure if they were going to get a major TV deal and they ended up on Destination America. And she had to get on a thing and reassure people that they were actually going to get a TV deal. But I would imagine this didn't go as swimmingly as they probably would have wanted it to, mostly because I don't know if it was a situation where they found out when we did.
Yeah, I don't know if they found out when we did, but it wasn't more than maybe 12 hours prior. I think more than likely they were notified. I think how we found out was because they found out and they started leaking the news. So I think it would probably be within hours of them finding out we found out. At least, with all the things going on, that's the hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Like I said, just
go on.
yeah, yeah. Just to wrap things up. First Glass didn't feel like it did good for morale, but things can be regathered and remustered up. I just know a lot of that glue. I just know he was a lot of the glue on that roster and just the energy that he had with the return of the TNA thing and all that. And it just seemed like he was a great rallier and leader of men and women on that roster. So, um, but like you said, Tommy Dream was there. He's level headed and has a lot of trust and well being for a lot people there. And in terms of credibility, you're not gonna find too many people with more than Tommy Dreamer and Gail Kim. So hopefully they can be together can be that glue, and I would imagine they also go be the on screen people we're gonna get because Demore was doing that too. So um, I don't know about the new guy that uh, taking his spot, but hopefully this they all looking to improve upon the business dealings and level the thing up. I know a lot of people was comparing it on Twitter, comparing it to what Sinclair was doing with Ring of Honor, basically just having it in a stationary thing, not going backwards, but definitely not going forwards, just kind of staying in the middle. Hopefully that's not the plan. Um, and I also saw, which was kind of disheartening, there was a couple of accounts that were adding the Anthem guys and telling people to go attack them. That's never a good thing. Don't care what the situation is. Attacking people, giving them death threats, this, that, and the third. People you don't know, businesses, dealings behind the scenes that you have really no deep comprehension about. Don't do that. That's not the right thing to do, no matter how you feel. Just put that in some positive energy, support the more, continue to support the roster and the company. because they didn't picked up some good momentum. But yeah, I guess we just gonna have to see with these upcoming tapings and shows. You know how things are gonna go, how things are gonna line up, and how the morale is gonna come off. You know, because that's like I said, it was a big deal.
It was a tremendously big deal, and to echo your thoughts, we saw that again with the Rock's daughter. What's her name?
Yeah,
Ava Rain or something like that. They did the same thing after Cody gave up his spot in one of the worst segments in wrestling history. But it's entertainment. It shocked me that the Moore's gone. I'm not going to sit here and go, I hope Anthem dies and blah, 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 blah. I don't know,
yeah.
Scott.
I didn't get a text from Chad like, man, I just went off on my girl because it's the more thing. Man, it's like
Right?
what?
Like, I was a little and I'm concerned. That's fair. You're allowed to be concerned about the future of the company, especially when it's on the come up. Now, I don't think there's going to be a Sinclair situation and there's a lot more with the Sinclair situation that doesn't get talked about. The reason why Sinclair never put money into Ring of Honor was because they were putting money into a failed baseball network that was going to take over and house the streaming services of Major League Baseball. It fell apart though, and they wasted, I think, I want to say $2 billion on it, if not more, maybe less, but an ungodly amount of money, and it destroyed Sinclair's what's the word I'm looking for? Not viability, but their cash abilities, like the solvency. It destroyed their solvency to the point where they basically sent all their regional sports networks to die. So when you don't have money to do the leading operation in your product, in your project, you're not going to have money for things like Ring of Honor. Like there's a lot more going on with the Ring of Honor situation than just, well, Sinclair didn't want it. They did. They just didn't have the money for it because they made some bad investments. Anthem's not in that same situation. Anthem, for the best of my understanding, fully intends on integrating far more of TNA's everyday into their active channel, which is Access TV, and with a lot of movement going on in ownership in that area, with who owns the television network and whatnot. I think you're going to see a lot more TNA talent on Access TV. Now, I don't know why Demore would have to be replaced for that to happen. I have a feeling that he just became too much of a headache. I think that's the real point of contention, is that management and Anthem thought he became too much of a headache. Now, that's just hyperbole. That's just speculation. I don't know. But one would think that that's the most obvious answer, is that he just became somebody that they just stopped wanting to deal with. And if it was just as simple as requesting pay raises or more money for their product or what have you, I don't think that would have been the issue. Part of me believes that Demore had himself a certain way about him that didn't really sit well with people. Apparently, one of the reports stated that Demore would frequently threaten to quit, and I believe that because it's such a weird thing to do. That you and like if somebody said, "Oh yeah, well Chad got his way because he always threatened to quit," and it wasn't true, I'd be like, "Bitch, that ain't true," and I would be very vocal about it publicly. Demore hasn't been very vocal about this publicly. I think he's telling a lot of stories to journalists and writers. I don't think any of them are going to be countering what has been said about him, about his tactics about getting what he wanted. I am still going to watch TNA and support TNA. I'm very interested to see where things go. I hope the status quo remains. I would like to see what Tommy Dreamer Gail Kim can do as the head of creative. And I hope that the new CEO just balances the budget, gives them money when necessary, and gets them back to a point where they're a bit bigger. Now, if Demore comes back around and buys the company, okay, let's find out what happens. If somebody else buys the company, okay, let's see what happens. As long as the company still exists, though, I'm not going to be too torn up about it. But there's a part of me that does feel that Demore got it as big as he could. And that Demore may have been holding it back from achieving higher heights, because every big deal that got eyes on TNA really didn't do as much for the company as people want to believe. And I feel like he had a detrimental effect in doing those deals. The AEW deal, the Royal Rumble deal. Cool for Jordan Grace to show up, but she lasted, what, 4 minutes, didn't do anything?
Yeah, I mean, she definitely did more than Mickey did. But like I said, that was Vince. Yeah, Vince was still under a lot of power when I think that happened. So that might have been something that was begrudgingly done. I feel like this was more of a even kill thing because Triple H does seem like somebody that is more up for collaboration uh, than previous regimes or what have you. But yeah, and I didn't even think. I don't know why I didn't even think about that. Like specifically where to put the blame at. But
What,
that blame, but it would fall on the more. Sorry, that blanked out. Right there. The more would take the blame for that AEW situation because he basically allowed this essential novice to come in and big brother you. In a way that did not. I mean, nothing about that deal felt really reciprocal to me. Like none of TNA's talent showed up in AEW at
no.
all. So it really felt like a one way thing. I always felt like they were popping up on TV in every sense of the way to remind everybody that they were doing Impact a favor. And it just like that situation couldn't have ended fast enough because it didn't really do nothing. So yeah, I guess that will fall on him. And to your point, this may be one of those situations begrudgingly, and because obviously a lot of people, you know, didn't like this at all, and I understand it. But this might have been a situation where he took the company as far as he can do. I mean, he been back there for what a decade rebuilding the brand up?
6 years, 7 years?
Yeah, almost a decade trying to get building the brand back up from seemingly nothing to have it earn its trademark name back. So maybe it was a situation where that's what he was there for. We always, the saying a reason in the season, that whole thing. Maybe that he got it to where it needed to go, and now it's time for it to go somewhere else, but not necessarily with him. So, like I said, I'm not going to doom and gloom because we've been there before and with good reason, and this is not that. Um, so you just kind of got to wait and see, But it does, it did feel like another reminder, like as in years prior, like as a TNA fan, like everything's always going good until they're not. So,
And that's kind of the point I think we should end the segment on is that there's no reason to be concerned until there's a reason to be concerned. As of right now, we just have some turnover. Let's see what
yeah,
happens. Maybe some good things will come out of this. Maybe not.
they're going back to Vegas, right?
Yeah, they're going back to Vegas. They're full steam ahead. Um, I have no reason to think that this company won't continue to see prosperous growth until I see a reason why this company won't have prosperous growth. One of the things I want to be very adamant on is that DeMar did a lot of deals with the devil. Tony Khan, Vince McMahon, Triple H. But he also brought in a lot of problematic people. Bobby Fish, Mike Elgin, Joey Ryan. And these weren't guys that didn't have any issues with them prior to arriving. And we've talked about this before. There's this history DeMar has with bringing in people that aren't exactly the best people, but he brings them in because they may generate some interest. Apparently, at some point after his release, DeMar and company had reached out to Matt Riddle, one of the most infamous sex pests in the history of wrestling. He is one of those guys that I don't know how he still has a career. He's in MLW currently alongside Bobby Fish, ironically enough. And it's one of those situations where when I hear Matt Riddle say, I had talks with TNA, I got to think to myself, I'm not mad that Scott D'Amore's gone. If these are the types of guys that he kept trying to bring in. And it kind of goes back to that whole Don Callis of it all, where he was essentially let go, allegedly, due to his sexual harassment of Scarlett Bordeaux, allegedly. No formal, information has ever come out about that, but people have kind of picked, one and one and added two to figure out that all makes four. And the rumor is that Callis left the promotion when his treatment of Bordeaux became not knowledgeable, but became known about in the upper echelon of the company. And there's a reason why Karrion Kross left. There's a reason why Bordeaux left. Remember Chris Levin, Kid Ref?
Mm-hmm.
He alluded to something on Twitter way back when that there was more going on as to why he wasn't in the company and why certain executives were being given a look or pass. And I feel like some of it has to do with the fact that it was callous-centric. And when you just kind of realize that there was so much of this nonsense going on, maybe D'Amore didn't do anything illicit, but he certainly didn't keep the people out of the company that he should have. He was willing to do deals with all sorts of people if it meant that TNA looked better at the end of the day than it did the day before. Even if it means taking a ding or two and getting a couple more fans out of it. And I feel like Matt Riddle would have been a step too far, because the one thing I will say that I'm thankful for was when that speaking out movement happened in 2020, Ryan and Elgin were swiftly kicked out of the company. But I'm concerned that these are things that D'Amore knew about beforehand.
Yeah, and it took that. Yeah.
Exactly. And if he was the one, which I have to assume he was, that reached out to Riddle, it gives me more pause to think about what other things did he allow on his watch, look past on his watch, maybe not acknowledge on his watch. And
Yes.
it's certainly something to be concerned about.
It's one of the weird things I just thought about the concept when you were going through that. It's like it's the girl that's not gonna cheat on you, but they're always smiling in the face of dudes that F dudes girls.
Yeah. D'Amore's
Like,
not the guy pulling the trigger, but he's also voting against the bill that would prevent that from happening. So he's
you're
not a
too
murderer, but he's not
yeah.
helping either.
That's how not accusing you of cheating on me, but you overly friendly as shit. Oh man.
So yeah, I would be very upset if Matt Riddle came in.
Yeah, it's funny because I was watching a couple snippets from an interview that he did. Do you think? Well, yeah, you're the perfect person to ask this because you're also uh, knowledgeable about the MMA of it all. Do you think he could dog walk Goldberg if they got into it?
At 50, what is he? 56? Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
Now, if you're talking about 38-year-old Bill Goldberg, Goldberg doesn't need to know any techniques. Like if he gets his hands around your throat and squeezes, he'll kill you. The man had a grip like a vice grip, like it was insane. But yeah, when you're threatening to beat up a soon-to-be senior citizen, like what's impressive about that? Now, if Goldberg was able to get him with a good kick, like a good front kick, Riddle's going down because Riddle doesn't have any power in his hands. He's not exactly a strong striker, but he is a good grappler. But he's not good enough. I think if Riddle went toe to toe with Kurt Angle today, Angle would eat him alive, and that's with all the replacements that Angle has had to deal with his joints. Well, let's pivot though. Let's talk about the Booker T situation, and I'm going to keep this truncated because there's a lot. Essentially, one woman by the name of. Oh, jeez, of course I can't even find the name now. Rochelle Rose, there it is. One woman by the name of Rochelle Rose claimed that she was fired by Booker T for speaking out about a ex-trainee who was removed from the school in 2020 due to his behavior. Apparently, he had a lot of mental issues, and due to that, the school decided that it was in their best interest to part ways. The young man apparently had a lot of issues. I think some of it may have revolved around Rochelle. I think her involvement with him in a relationship aspect has been overblown a tad, but I'm not there. I don't know. But the crux of it seems to be that this young man, within the last few months, contacted Booker, met with him, and tried to get back into the school because apparently he felt that his life had gone away, that he didn't want it to, and he felt that he could find some structure under Booker back at his school. And Booker being genuinely a good dude, cared about this kid and wanted him to do well, so he wanted to see if things could get worked out. But apparently there was a lot of actual issues between Rochelle and this gentleman whose name I can't find at the moment. And had Booker been informed of everything at the moment, different reactions, different situations would have been taken into account. Apparently, the gentleman, whose name I forget, showed up to, I can't remember if it was the school or if it was a wrestling show, armed with a gun, but he just sat there and didn't do anything and went home. And apparently, that's, kind of a scary situation. However, it's also Texas. I'm pretty sure half the crowd had guns. But apparently,
Yeah,
because of his mental state, they were more concerned about that, which is justifiably so. But the issues weren't so much about Rochelle and this ill individual. It was about the way Booker handled it, saying that she was let go of, fired was the exact words, because of her bringing up the situation to Booker. And what all kicked this off with was there was a wrestling show that went on, and they found out that the gentleman in question with the issues were nearby, I think next door at a bar, just hanging out. And apparently that caused concerns for everyone involved, and Rochelle and a group of male wrestlers went to confront him and tried to get him to leave the area. There may have been a restraining order involved at some point. It's a very long, very in-depth story. But basically, the turmoil came against Booker essentially by saying that she felt unprotected and that Booker fired her for raising concerns. Booker said that he never fired her. And again, this is the truncated version. It's hefty. And Booker went on to say that that's not why he stopped booking her. He stopped booking her because she was essentially disobeying directions. He found out about the guy being at the bar at that one specific show, and he told Rochelle, don't go over there. Stay here, go home, do whatever. Don't go confront him. Because while he didn't know everything he needed to know in that exact moment, he did know that he didn't want this to escalate. So he told her to go home. She did not. She went and confronted a guy that she claimed to be very afraid of. So now there are questions about exactly how much responsibility Booker bears when he, in fact, in writing, or I guess I should say spoken word, has denied that he fired her at all, and has said that the reason why eventually she was let go was because she exacerbated a dangerous situation, which was not mentioned in the original article, was that she was told not to go and she went anyway. Here's what he said. Let's go with the night in question. It was an incident that went down. It was the first time I found out about it. The person we're talking about is Rochelle Rose, a former student of reality wrestling, had an issue with a prior student that was part of the reality wrestling years prior. I think he vacated reality wrestling in 2020, a situation that I knew nothing about until this night. I found out about it at the show. I thought I handled it. After the show, Rochelle Rose came to me and told me about the problem, not the situation. The problem, when she told me about the problem with her and Sean Reed having an issue, I say, let's fix this problem. I knew Sean Reed was at the bar next door of reality wrestling property, and I asked Rochelle Rose, please don't go there. Go somewhere else so we can diffuse the situation and handle it. For me, this is the best. This is an issue that I can't handle. This is an issue that the police need to be involved with. I left. After that conversation, I stretched Rochelle, go somewhere else. Go somewhere, so many other places you can go. Do that for me so we can discuss the situation. I left, went home. Next thing you know, I'm getting a phone call from the bar owner. I'm getting a phone call from the police and the boys to come back and figure out what happened. Rochelle chose to go to that bar. What happened after that was totally out of my control. I just want to stress. Charmel and I take full responsibility for anything that happens under of reality wrestling's roof. Anything that happens outside of the company, that is totally out of our hands. For this story to be written the way it was, I fired somebody over a stalking incident. That is not something that happened. We can't fire anybody because we don't hire anybody. These are independent contractors. We can book them and not book them. That's normally the way it works in this wrestling world. He goes on to say, I'm willing to answer and answer any and all questions because I'm not running and I'm not hiding from anybody as far as my integrity, as far as reality wrestling and what I've built over the last 20 years working with so many young women. My young women at reality wrestling, if they ever make it to the next level, I make sure to tell them, if anybody treats you differently than I treated you, you call me because I know that's not right. He goes on to say,
Gilmore asked if any more safety precautions were taken after the incident. Yeah, not just for her safety, but for everybody in the building. My family is working day-to-day operations as well. We have students in and out of the gym on a regular basis. After the incident, we had armed security as well as adding cameras to the facility. When Gilmore, who I guess is his co-host, then asked about the no pressing decree that Rose claimed was not issued to Reed, he says we did that as well. It's on paper. It's in black and white. So Booker's saying that the gentleman Reed was issued a no trespassing decree that Rose is claiming he never got. Booker's saying that he did get it. This goes back to 2020. Sean Reed was asked to leave Reality of Wrestling's property back in 2020. It goes back quite some time as far as him not being part of Reality Wrestling. That's why I feel like this was a police issue more so than it was a company issue as far as everything went. The mall had a report for this kid to not show up. I don't know how long. I know you can't get something like that indefinitely. As far as a temporary restraining order for this kid to not be on the property, yes. So there's a lot of he said, she said, and honestly, I think a lot more of this has to do with people being emotionally hurt in all of it. And thankfully, no one being physically hurt, but I do think that it's not Booker's fault. Now, originally when I heard the story, I thought Booker had a lot of responsibility on this. After reading his statements and reading what he said and how little has been said about it publicly to rebuff him, I have to feel like there's more truth to what Booker's saying and a lot of details that were left out of the initial story, which unfortunately does happen. When asked about the lack of communication between ROW officials, Booker said, "I'm not going to sit and say something didn't happen and someone didn't feel they may feel a certain way. I'm not going to question that." In regards to Rochelle feeling afraid of, I think the guy's name is Sean Reed. I can't say Rochelle didn't feel the way she did as far as being able to communicate to someone. I thought Rochelle Rose and my wife had connection, and I thought they had talked on a regular basis. My wife is at the school more than I am. And Rochelle could have easily called me and said something about it if something was going on. I'm not dismissing Kevin Bernhardt or anybody for not telling me there's an issue going on. I think Kevin Bernhardt was a wrestler for them as well. I do know that Kevin released Sean Reed from, or no, I guess Kevin is the head of the wrestling school side of things. I do know that Kevin released Sean Reed from Reality Wrestling in 2022. It was out of our hands as far as that went. It was a police matter. It didn't have anything to do with ROW. The original article stated Booker was not aware of the situation or Reed himself encountered Reed in the parking lot. The claim from talent of ROW was that Reed had made threats on himself as well as implied to Booker directly he'd consider attacking others at the school. With some claim that he even mentioned shooting up the venue. We're told that Booker walked Reed back into the venue after he'd been ejected, and in what he claimed was an effort to calm Reed down and prevent him from doing something crazy. So he goes on to say about that, as far as Sean Reed goes, I didn't know anything about any of this with Sean and Rochelle until that night, the night in question where Rochelle confronted him at the bar. The person that told me it was about Sean Reed, I was talking out in front of the building. It was before the show started, and he had walked up to me. I hadn't seen this kid in 2 years. He said the incident that happened with him and Rochelle Rose, he said he didn't want to date her anymore. He said he just wanted to be part of ROW. This is where Booker basically just says I tried to help him. Now I don't know the in depth of the relationship between them and what happened between them because apparently Sean Reed and Rochelle Rose did date, but it appears that more than not, Sean wanted to return to the company, not to her. But they apparently had a very nasty falling out. And she was still with the promotion when that was going on, so who knows. Asked if Reed had a weapon on him that night, Booker said that's not true. The place he sat, I made sure he was watched by an armed guard and 6 other people. I made sure that I got instinct. I could have easily let Sean Reed leave the building that night, and he left in a depressed state, and something really happened that night, but nothing happened at ROW. When asked about the allegations of stalking and if he was aware, Booker said not stalking. He made aware that he did not want to date her. He said, I don't want to date her. I just want to be part of the promotion. This is something I've missed for the last 3 years. That's what my concern was. My concern was the kid. I didn't know about her issue. Maybe I had been aware of her. Maybe had I been aware of her issue, I wouldn't have taken just as much consideration. I do know that if I have a kid in front of me going through something and going to make a rash decision right now, he hasn't done anything, so I can't call the police on him. I have to do something myself. I made a decision. I think the decision that I made was right because nothing happened. Gilmore then asked for more clarification when he spoke to Rose regarding the situation. Rose came up to me and told me Sean was here and I shouldn't be, and he shouldn't be here. I told her, you can't tell Sean Reed to leave the bar. The bar owner would have to do that. He would have have to have a restraining order. Just go somewhere else. We need to defuse the situation. Something could have happened to this kid, and something could really happen if this kid is deranged and crazy as she's making it out to be. I need her to go home. Just like I would tell my kids, go home tonight. She chose to go there. Her and a couple other people, they chose to go there. All this is on video. I'm not making up any stories. I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to throw anybody on the bus. Rachel, is one of my students for a long time. My wife helped her on so many occasions. I've helped her on so many occasions. This is what we do. We help the young people. We're not here to try and hurt them. After this incident happened, and specifically after Rochelle vehemently, please do not go over there. Go somewhere else tonight. She literally did the opposite of what I asked her to do. Of course, that made me feel a certain way because after this incident, and I walked back into the chaos. I was fortunate that as little damage was done as it was. Now, Fightful has the whole thing. I'm not going to read it anymore. This is fucking this is bountiful. But basically, he's denying that he ever fired her. That she disregarded direct instruction to not exacerbate a situation that she in fact exacerbated. And I don't know how much of this is true anymore. I don't know who to believe. So I'm not going to believe anyone. I think Booker T has the most to lose here. So I think he's going to be the most logical with what he says. If he says he has things on tape, if he has, documents, I'm going to believe him because if he doesn't, he's fucked. Not because I like Booker more than anyone else. It's because this dude has to make sure his ass is covered. I think this situation got a lot more traction because of the climate of this country we're in right now. And I don't think it's nearly to the level that maybe it should be or maybe that it did hit. I think in a lot of ways this may be an overreaction to a degree. Now, I can't say that she wasn't stalked by her ex-boyfriend. I don't know. But I also do know that people lie. And people exaggerate. And people create scenarios where they're the victim. What's that woman's name? The one who killed her mom? Because her mom kept abusing her with medical treatments that she didn't need.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Right? So, there are clearly examples of people in this world who will lie for any reason whatsoever. I don't know that Rochelle lied. I don't know that Sean Reed stalked her. I don't know. But I do know that by the sound of this, she had a hand in this in terms of the situation at play. I don't think things would have gotten to where they did had she not ramped up. That's the only thing I know. At the very least, that's the only thing I believe. I don't know it. I wasn't there. I haven't seen footage of it. But one of the guys, and I read this on Twitter, so you'll have to go deep diving. One of the guys on Twitter basically said that he went with her to the bar. So there is corroborating witnesses. So I know she went to the bar to find this guy. Maybe he's the biggest creep in the world. Maybe he's just a dude that got heartbroken, is dealing with some mental issues and didn't handle it the best. I don't know. I just know that this story may have been a bit more overblown than it needed to be. It sounded like things got cranked up far beyond what they needed to. And what I'm most happy about, if I can be happy about anything, is that no one was significantly harmed in any real way. Because it seems like everyone who is involved in this situation has an opportunity to learn, grow, heal, and move on with their lives. And I think that is, especially after Sunday, or I think it was Sunday, when that mega church got shot up in Texas by that woman. I think this is the best case scenario for something like this. So I for one, actually think Booker handled it quite well. But, again, that's an opinion. I don't know if it's fact. I wasn't there. Mark, any thoughts on this before we move into the WrestleMania main event of it all?
Oh man, I'm right with you, man. I think, and I'm glad, much like you, put a lot of the onus just because of what I briefly read and saw. It obviously, it's very much my mentality on X. In terms of Booker carrying a lot of the weight of it, and then thankfully you cared enough to go through a lot of that written jargon and really detailing what he said and what the situation was, and ultimately it seems like a very difficult situation that he was in, and that he tried to do as much as he could for what the situation called for as it was ongoing, because even in that situation he's essentially going off he said, she said as well, because you're obviously not trying to bring the two of those individuals together to keep from the situation escalating, but you also want to be fair and impartial, because like you said, they're not necessarily hirees, but they're consistent clients, if you will, in that regard to how when it turns to getting booked. So, seems like a very difficult situation that he was in, and he did the best he could while as the situation was ongoing. And like you said, seems like he covered most of his bases, and like you said, hopefully he kept records and whatnot. Because if he didn't, this could potentially elevate. But yeah, this I would hate to be in that scenario, but it's kind of unfortunate par for the course sometimes when you're dealing with just people and the way certain things work. And we look at WWE, we're gonna get off into them in a second, but half of that company is basically either dating or married.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of walk through those situations very carefully in terms of company policy and what have you, and just having a certain discernment to dealing with people in general, and a certain amount of patience. But I'm very glad that he went through as much detail as he did, because he does do that company with his wife, and for her, it'd be increasingly bad if she was being involved and heavily as she is, and wouldn't be involved, with the women, and not be able to somebody we came to when situations like that happened. It just seems like, to your point again, that certain things got aggravated when it didn't need to be, potentially likely from both sides, and then it just came to a point where there was a potential ceasefire before things kind of got escalated. I mean, I think most people want to back down when a gun potentially comes into play. So hopefully, like you said, thankfully nobody got hurt, and hopefully things can kind of cool down. But things be having to get addressed so immediately, because he instantly became the Green Goblin on X because of what people heard and read, and I don't think he ever got necessarily directly pointed out by anybody involved, but because it's his promotion and that went on, it just assumed that he kind of let, the Jeepers Creepers monster happen. You dig what I'm saying? So, yeah.
So it's also worth pointing out that he's alleged abuse on her end as well. So, if you want to believe her sight unseen and you don't want to believe him sight unseen, that says a lot about you. Just as in the inverse, I don't believe anyone in this situation. I think Booker's the only one who has any reason to tell the truth because he has the most to lose.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't. I'm not going to sit here and claim to know Booker T. I don't. I appreciate him. I like him a lot, especially as a wrestler. But it's very possible he's covering up too. I don't know. And that's kind of the point of the story, is that we don't know really what's going on, because when the story came out, it told one very specific story, and with information from Booker, it became very different. And with the information from Sean Reed, it became even more different. It should be clarified, though, and I want to be very clear about this. Sean didn't bring a gun to the bar, at least to the best of my knowledge, or to the night of the incident. This was prior to a prior show.
Gotcha.
And considering that Texas has gun laws the way Maine has lobster, or I should say, Texas has gun laws like Nevada has water.
Yeah,
I think that's a more apropos analogy, because Maine does have a lot of lobsters.
make my day, bub.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just glad everything worked out to the best of the, because it could have gone a lot. Apparently there was a fight though at the bar, but no one died. So
Yeah. And again, with these situations, because we're gonna obviously move on quickly here. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback that scenario.
mm-hmm.
Like that has to be a hell of a thing to move through for Book, as somebody that not only cares certainly obviously about his pride and joy being that company, but for people, because it's just when situations like that get potentially domestic situations like that go left, and he ends up being the unintentional mediator because of what's happening in a particular workspace. You kind of, it's an eggshell situation.
Mm-hmm.
So God bless him. Hopefully that's not been something that's been reoccurring with multiple individuals. So like you said, it sounds like he covered all his bases. He didn't demonize one party over the other. He like I said, kept about as even kill uh as you can. Without blowing things up. But I'm glad he did speak out, because, like I said, he was getting the classic internet pylon without all the information.
So again, check out the Fightful story for more information because there's some details that were left out and that may change your perception or your opinion of it. But we only have so much time to cover stars. So last one, main event, WrestleMania 40, going to be. Firstly, I want to just say this: I hate 2 nights WrestleManias. I think they're stupid. Well, did you like the 8-hour shows? No, I didn't. We can go to one night of 4 hours and call it a day. I don't know why we need to put, fucking Chelsea Green on. She's not good. I don't care if she's popular. She's not good. I don't know why we need to have the women's NXT tag team titles or whatever the fuck we have left in that division. No one cares. No one. Marcus, not a single fucking person on Sunday night goes, I really wish the Carolina Panthers were in this game. The WrestleMania card should be your top fucking talent. I don't care if there's a battle royal. I don't care about the WrestleMania payday. Am I going to get a WrestleMania payday? No, then I don't give a fuck about the WrestleMania paydays. The WrestleMania card should be the best of the few and the proud and the Marines. Maybe not the last. And with honors.
Yeah, like Cena's not here tonight.
So, I don't give a shit about 2 nights. It didn't work for New Japan. It sucked. It's not working for WWE. Someone had to remind me, that Bianca Belair headlined to WrestleMania. Because the headlining of a WrestleMania no longer has the same significance. Because there's 2 chances to do it every year. But that's what this company does. It devalues itself. In its quest for mediocrity. We have 2 Royal Rumbles. Yeah, and they both sucked this year. I don't care if you have a women's Royal Rumble. I don't care if you have a men's Royal Rumble. My thought is just alternate the goddamn thing. Have the women's Rumble one year, have the men's Rumble the next. Same thing with the Elimination Chamber. I don't need 6 in a year, let alone 2 per night. I don't need 14 Hell in a Cell matches in one go. It works with Lockdown because the cage matches were all different gimmicks. It doesn't work in WWE. TLC, terrible. And now we're getting the WrestleMania 5 version of that. But because so many WWE fans are just so, in the head, ostriching, it's just like they don't realize that they're watching their thing that they think is so impressive be devalued. Could you imagine if there was a second game to the Super Bowl? Chiefs and who the fuck was it? 49ers play, and then the Bills and who did the Niners beat?
Yeah, it was gonna be the Ravens and the Lions.
The Ravens and the Lions. Could you imagine if that was night 2 of the Super Bowl? The Lions and the fucking Ravens play? Who the fuck would watch? I mean, I'd watch it. But who would care? So I don't care that there's 2 nights of WrestleMania. And that doesn't mean anything to the story we're telling, Marcus. Because the story we're telling is, what the fuck's going on with The Rock? Now, I saw the highlights of the press conference. I actually think, as begrudgingly as this is going to hurt for me to say, I like that they did that. Because everything was going badly. And apparently, according to various outlets, Cultaholic posted the story, but they're not the ones who broke it. Aaron Varble of SE's Scoops apparently wrote that Rock versus Reigns was the main event for one of the nights of WrestleMania. The fan backlash was very bad. But they're going to try to, I guess every 10 years they make up new shit. In WrestleMania 30, they're like, oh, Daniel Bryan was always part of the story. No, it wasn't. And there was... Go on.
No, I was like, you come on, man. The Kings are switching the narrative. When Cena first lost that first Mania match to The Rock, that also led to his divorce.
Yeah. Not only that, but there was always a rumor going on. I don't know how substantial it is, but I like rumors, at least in the world of wrestling, that the original plan for WrestleMania 20 was Shawn versus Triple H again in the main event. But they're like, we've done this to death. We can't do it again. So they added Benoit, and then they're like, maybe Benoit could be the guy. Because there was a lot of people believing that Shawn Michaels would leave the ring that night with the belt until Benoit got involved. Now, I don't know how much of that is true, and I heard this in 2005, not 2020, so it had nothing to do with Benoit being erased from history. I just know that there was some rumors that Benoit wasn't the go-to guy come, Royal Rumble 2004. It only became evident afterwards. And I think, again, they're doing it again. And again, with, fucking WrestleMania 10. The idea was that it was going to be Brett going in there, I guess, against was it supposed to be Luger? I think that was the idea they had in place when they mapped out Brett winning the title at SummerSlam from Hogan. But then Hogan quit the company. They put the belt back on Yokozuna. They needed another patriotic figure since Hogan was gone, so they built up Lex, and Lex went from being a heel to being a face. It seems like every 10 years they have to fuck around with things. And they're doing it again. Now, this time, though, I'm not as mad. Now, do I want to watch Seth Rollins in a match with The Rock? No, not really. Do I find it fascinating that they could do a tag match on night one, followed by Roman versus Cody in night two? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I think that'll be super fucking interesting. I'm excited about that because it's easily the biggest match they can make right now. And I say that all the time when you do Bound for Glory, Slammiversary, Ring of Honor, not Ring of Honor, Final Battle. I don't know what all in I guess for AEW. You should always have the biggest names in the biggest matches. Period. It's your biggest show. It needs to feel that, and this is what they're doing, and I like it. One of the things I wish was that we were replacing Seth with CM Punk. I think that would be a delight for me. But mostly, you could replace Seth with his wife, and that would be a delight for me. You could replace Seth with Zach Gowen, and that would be a delight for me. Replacing Seth is the delight, not who replaces him. But I do think night one's going to be Seth and Cody versus Rock and Reigns, unless they've already announced it, which I don't think they have, because they haven't even gotten to the Elimination Chamber yet. And then I think night two, you'll see Seth versus Drew McIntyre, maybe, or maybe Walter Gunther. And I think the main event will be Cody versus Reigns. I don't see Rock doing double duty. I think he'll be in the tag match in night one, and that's it. Which I actually think is a better idea for a 50-something-year-old who is, well, I'm not going to say on steroids, but I'm certainly not going to say he's off.
I mean, I don't know if it was the first or the second match he had with Cena. He tore his pelvis off the bone.
Yeah, second. Turns out when you wrestle for, when you lift weights for bulk, you lose flexibility, and thus you lose the ability to take bumps as well. Go figure.
I do find it funny though that he's essentially with the L he took with DC. He's essentially getting the B Black Adam now.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus.
We don't kill roles here. I do.
Marcus, do you think the tag match into the solo match, night one, night two, is going to be the way it goes?
It needs to go that way. It needs to go that way, and I 100% like you. Because with how many times we've had to see this company do stuff on a dime, and obviously the underlying narrative that is part of the truest of form is that cause subject to change. And that's always the thing. But we've seen this company have to change on dimes for people passing suddenly, them needing to manipulate whole numerical narratives around championships earned, championship reigns, feuds that have been going on for years, but then all of a sudden the new narrative is it just started to be a blood feud. Cutting matches last minute. It's I 100% believe that fan backlash had them change the narrative, but it ultimately for the better because and they can it backed them into a corner that they needed to come out swinging creatively, and thankfully they've done that. And ultimately, a lot of it is them having to keep things going the way it is going because they do have this dark cloud looming over them that's not going anywhere. But I am quite interested because obviously the Rock is my favorite of all time. But to me, when he came back for that little instance with Jinder, that was the first time in a long time I've been there, like watching him and kind of been annoyed because to me that shtick just gotten old. Sometimes it works in certain scenarios, but there it was just something to do, burn the hell out of time, and it didn't do nothing for me. I ultimately felt bad for Jinder because he's essentially had to over talk waiting on the Rock to get there. But to me, this allows just something fresh for the Rock to do.
I will say one of the best things about Rock has been his heel run in '03.
Yeah,
And I think if we get more of that, but with maybe more of a harder edge, I could be very into a Rock heel run, especially against Cody, which I think, long term, if you want to involve him more, maybe you build to Cody versus Rock at SummerSlam in a one-on-one. I think that could be very interesting.
it's interesting because somebody floated this idea. It was interesting because I think the foundation of it is, more than anything, The Rock has to be the guy that gets cheered because while I think they did get pushed into this villain narrative, and I think it's gonna benefit The Rock more than hurt him. He is the guy that very much likes to play to that crowd. Going back to that shtick thing, he very much is the people's champion. He can't really play into any of those elements of the shtick when he's healed. But I said, like I said, I think just go push him creatively. But somebody floated the idea of what if it's one of those things, and this may very well give the company more credit than there's been evidence before. What if it's a thing where it's a turn coming, right? Because the damn segment was so awkward of can't, Cody just handing it over to The Rock. What if it was a situation where Cody knew that he couldn't come into the situation twice and not get screwed over the same way? So he's essentially set up a scenario for The Rock to basically be a Trojan horse.
I mean,
And a
maybe.
situation. So what if a situation happens where it's either a triple threat or a situation where obviously everybody's out there, people are in the corner, and the Samoan just comes in towards the end of the match of it all, and then suddenly The Rock turns and rights the ship because in his mind Roman has 100% derailed the entire narrative of the family, and Cody gets the win. Rock ultimately becomes the hero again because he kind of has to be the hero because that's his thing. And this allows for the family versus family thing because the whole storyline with Roman started with family, got to end that way. But for a lot of people, that feud isn't something that needs the title. So it solves multiple things. It gets Rock back in the good graces. It dethrones Roman finally. It puts the situation on Cody and it gets them another main event potentially for next Mania or SummerSlam with The Rock and Roman.
That could certainly happen. There's a lot there that I think makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah.
don't see Rock. No, God, they'll probably do it. I don't see them having Cody win dirty. I think if anything, Roman and Rock will have an issue in the tag. Cody wins night two, and then maybe you build up to Rock Roman at SummerSlam, if not WrestleMania 41. But I'm not. I don't know if I want to see that either. I like what we're doing right now with the idea of a tag match on night one, Cody Roman on night two.
Yeah.
God, I hope that's what they do. Otherwise, I'm gonna be very sad.
Yeah, regardless of what they do or don't do, they have to drop the belt to Cody at this point. They can't go through all this because and it's funny because we talk about the over investment with the whole situation, um, and unnecessary BS. Because I'm not overly invested in none of this stuff like that, particularly him finishing the story. I think that this has been some of the most highest wrestling comedy I've seen with everything around him not finishing the story between the stuff on social media and just the narrative in general. But they kind of have to put the title on it. Because if these fans are going to the point where they're leveling death threats, and this is the pathetic part of uh, the IWC, leveling death threats against somebody's daughter who is not even tied to the situation because they really just can't detach uh, wrestling from reality, then you really do have to do something to kind of line things up better than what they've done before. And again, keeping a lot of balls in the air because essentially, it's about the storm over there, depending on how things continue to go. Because a couple of those individuals who have been bad seeds are still there. Because I do think is PSA still there?
I think so.
So yeah, it's a couple bad seeds, and who knows? Lesnar got mentioned, and that's another silver lining with this whole thing. I'm so glad that that situation kicked him out of this because essentially he was gonna come in and take away spots that could have been given to people who have been consistently there and consistently working. So yeah, but like I said, this is an interesting time. There's a lot of creativity going into this whole another twist with the Samoan family. Something interesting for the potentially for the Rock to do, and a lot of interesting scenarios. But it continues to be interesting how this company has to walk ass backwards in the scenarios they should have just been running towards in the first place. The Brian situation uh, being one, now this, and I'm sure we can name countless other times where they've had to you know get the head out of their ass because of the backlash that they got for decisions.
We could, but we'll have to save that for next week. We are out of time tonight. Marcus, wonderful show as always. You can find him on his other show. It's the True Penny Show, TruePennyShow. You can find them on Twitter, True Penny Show. Marcus, your personal Twitter is Paradox Kid, PARADOXKID. I did that backwards, but I still got you.
That's me.
You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHED, and on the Instagram at Chad's Photo Hut, CHEDSPHOTOHUT. Be sure to check in next Tuesday as we actually cover the second portion of what we wanted to talk about today, which is the things we'd like to see in wrestling. I'm going to make a note of that, make sure that we lead with that next week unless something else dramatic happens. So tune in for that. We are obviously pushing that a week. But yeah, for Marcus Green, I'm Chad Bordeaux. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And Marcus, take us out.
Good night.